Hello and welcome to CrossTalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Post-coup attempt realities with Turkish President Erdogan firmly in control. He's demanded a cleansing of the military and many social institutions. What kind of Turkey does he intend to create? And will Turkey's foreign policy change? To CrossTalk Turkey, I'm joined by my guest, Yunus Soner in Istanbul. He's the deputy chairman of the Turkish Patriotic Party. In Beirut, we have Martin Jay. He is a freelance correspondent for Deutsche Welle, BBC, Al Jazeera, The National, and Daily Mail. And in Washington, we cross to Daniel Faraci. He is the director of the Grassroots Political Consulting. All right, gentlemen, CrossTalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I very much appreciate it. Yunus, if I go to you first, in Istanbul, the repercussions of the coup attempt continue to ripple through Turkey and internationally. First and foremost, what kind of Turkey does Mr. Erdogan want to create? He has enormous amounts of power in his hands right now. There's nothing holding him back. What is he going to do? Go ahead.
I don't think that he's in the mood to create a different Turkey right now. He has started a huge, he had started a huge fight against the Gülen movement before. And this fight now took the form of an armed conflict. In fact, the coup attempt was a kind of armed upheaval, if you will, by the Gülenist organization. So now, today in Turkey, the debate is not about a new society or a change, but it's about the Gülen organization. And much more than that, it's about the relations with the US, because this is now the highly, highly debated topic here. There is no social change going on. And I would also doubt that Erdogan has that much power, because if you face the Gülen organization and if you declare that the US is responsible for the coup attempt in Turkey, then you have a huge enemy. And against this huge enemy, you need to ally yourself with the biggest social factors and fractions as possible. It's not that much an internal conflict that is going on here, but much more openly declared conflict with the US.
Yunus, if I can go to Martin here, I mean, tens of thousands of people are being detained, arrested, losing their jobs. I mean, academia is under threat here. The military is being decapitated. I would say that's a lot of change going on in Turkey. Go ahead, Martin.
I don't think it is. I think you might be reading too much into hysteria from Western journalists. I think we need to take a chill pill. We need to relax and take a step back and actually see what's happened. We need some sobriety. It's perfectly normal. The country's just had an attempted military coup, and I think it's quite normal. If it was France or Britain, the same thing would be happening. You need to do a closer examination of those people who were part of it, and of course their families and their contacts and everybody that's behind that. So I think all this talk of purge and crackdowns and arrests, I think it's somewhat exaggerated. I think it's perfectly normal that Erdogan would go ahead with such, just to make a point of what was said earlier by Yunus in Istanbul. Yeah, I mean, there is a power problem, so we could expect that from Erdogan. But I mean, you know, I think we have to look at Turkey in a much more sober way. It's a democracy, and if you look at all the countries in the Middle East and North Africa, there are very, very few countries which stand out as being true democracies that have real opposition parties. Perhaps one or two stand out. One tends to think of Morocco, perhaps. But Turkey does have a real opposition party. It's a real democracy, and there's a lot at stake.
Okay, Daniel, would you like to weigh in there? Because, I mean, we've seen all through all through Erdogan's time in high politics is he has been at loggerheads with the military, and what kind of Turkey should be created. And I'll more or less stick with my first question here, because a lot of people would say that democracy is under threat as a result of this attempted coup. Go ahead, Daniel.
And this is not new. I couldn't disagree more with the other guests. Erdogan has been working on this for over 10 years. He has systematically removed many people a little bit over time. Now it's more en masse. But he has been removing generals tactically, changing constitution on judiciary, buying off political opponents. Erdogan has learned very well from watching his neighbors in the region as to how the style of dictatorial rule is under the auspices of a democracy works. And he has been strategically removing these individuals, knowing that a coup would eventually come. as is written in the Constitution from Ataturk, to remove an Islamist government from the secular democracy. I was actually there in 1997 during the last one, and that leads to another topic of the insight that he has. I think there's a lot of suspicion out there that he was involved himself and knew this was coming and utilized it to grab his grip on power and to enhance his authoritarian rule as quickly as possible. And in regard to the other guests talking about the U.S., the test to the U.S. is being done around the world because we have a president that is completely checked out and is finished with democracy, international relations, and an abysmal foreign policy of the last 2 terms of his administration. But, you know, and everyone is seeing how far they can go until the next one comes.
Peter, let's get some things right.
Go ahead, jump in. Go ahead. That's the point of the program, Eunice. Go ahead.
This is not an operation against the opposition. There is no arrests against any opposition party members. There is no treatment of any opposition organizations or opposition media or something else. This is an operation about the Gülen organization. Not less, but not more. Let's get it right first. It's wrong. The second mistake that was made is to picture this conflict as a conflict between Kemalists and the government. The chief command did not support the coup, and you do not need to doubt that the military still strongly believes in the principles of Kemalism and of the Kemalist Republic. So this is the second mistake that is made. And the third mistake is that this fight has been going on since 10 years. This is unfortunately not true, although the Gülen organization had been installing itself into the state since the 80s, actually. Before the Erdogan government even came to power, they started installing themselves into the state apparatus and playing their pro-American role. Don't forget that their leader, this is a sect, that their leader is in the United States for 15 years.
Let's talk about the United States. I want to talk about the foreign policy element in a little while. I agree. I want to talk about it, but I want to finish up domestically. Martin, if I can go to you, it's very important that when this coup was attempted, that supporters of Erdogan and the government came out en masse. Most people will reckon that's why the coup did not succeed here. I mean, you can call the Turkish president a lot of things, and maybe not some very pleasant things, but the people came out and they made a statement here about what kind of country they want to have too, which I think is very important. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I think he does have still a large amount of support on grassroots, and that was a point which jumped out to me as well when the events were unfolding. One of his first statements he said was, people need to come out onto the streets. So I think there's certainly some mileage in that argument. But where do we go from here now, though? I mean, we seem to have this idea that the America and your point from Daniel in Washington was absolutely bang on. We've almost screwed up U.S. foreign policy and thrown it in the bin. Yep. And we're starting to pay the price now. Yep. You know, you have a problem we have a problem on our hands now. Yep. Erdogan is one of the most important pieces in the jigsaw puzzle in the Middle East. Yep. Talking about the war in Syria and the refugee situation, and he knows it. And you know, so you may well be right. I haven't done my research so thoroughly. I'm not so clued up on the subject as Daniel in Washington. He may well have been plotting this for many years. I don't think that's so important. What I think we need to do now is to work out what game changers are ahead of us. And I think a guy like Erdogan now being unshackled from any commitments, from any links to U.S. foreign policy foibles is very worrying.
Okay, Daniel, go ahead, jump in.
Oh, yeah, a couple of points. historical context, I've been going there for over 20 years. 97, a well-organized coup, that in 1980, are both examples of what a well-organized coup actually is. This was a facade. This was precipitated by Erdogan himself to grab the grip of power. There has been a systematic removal of generals, changing the constitution for 10 years, and paying off and limiting political parties. And of course, voter apathy helped him increase in that power the entire time. I let you speak. I want to finish my point.
No, let Daniel, gentlemen, equal time, gentlemen, go ahead. No, please, Eunice, please, equal time for everyone, okay? Daniel, go ahead, finish your point.
Okay, sorry, but I mean, this
and voter apathy has enabled him to enhance his power. And now everybody is waking up. And that takes the point of the past, what just happened, the purge, and the future, which Martin had just pointed out, is absolutely critical, because now we have an Erdogan with limitless power, with the stronghold on his country, which may either lead to more civil conflict or just may let everybody go along for the ride into whatever Turkey looks like in the future. And that's dangerous.
Let Eunice have the last word on this part of the program. Go ahead, 40 seconds, my friend, jump in.
Okay.
Listen, I have been to the protests here as well, on the demonstrations in the Taksim Square several times. Interestingly, you don't see any party flags of his own Justice and Development Party. This is absolutely misleading to say that he's absolute power. It's the opposite. In the night of the coup, President Erdogan said the following: "We will resist like Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk." Now watch out. He has no Kemalist tradition. In the night of the coup, he relied on the idea of Kemalism himself. That's how he called the people to the streets. So you're absolutely wrong if you say
gentlemen,
that he's
I have to jump in here. We're going to go to a short break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on Turkey. Stay with RT. Okay, Martin, I'd like to go back to you. The international relations aspect of after this attempted coup is quite fascinating here. We had Erdogan before the attempted coup sending out feelers about normalizing relations with Damascus, with Israel as well, and the overtures to Russia. And then we have the attempted coup. And then, of course, we have the European Union having some fiery words. And Secretary Kerry threatened NATO membership, but the State Department kind of stepped back from that 2 days later here. What is in play here? Because, you know, what we have is Erdogan has a lot of, actually more choices than I think his enemies had hoped for after this attempted coup. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's spoiled for choice. And I think that's one of his aces, is that domestically he's on weak ground. And as Eunice said in Istanbul, he doesn't have so much support as perhaps people think he does. But internationally, that's where he has the edge. He's been playing a very, very clever game of poker with the European Union now for a few months, because the position he's in is so powerful to be right on the edge of Europe's borders, and to have that much control, to be the gatekeeper not only of potentially millions of Syrian refugees, but also terrorists as well. And now to take that arrangement even further, we played with this idea that possibly Turkey could have visa-free travel. That was flirted with by the European Union, and also the idea, more fantastic idea of EU membership one day. I wrote in an editorial a few weeks ago that both of those ideas floated by Brussels would be nonsense. It would never happen. And I think that's what we're looking at now. I think what's happened with the coup situation is that we now the cat is out of the bag. And this idea of Turkey accession now has been exposed. You've got Erdogan standing off with the European Union officials, and both people are looking at each other and saying, well, you weren't serious about it, were you? And the other one is saying, well, you weren't serious either. So Erdogan was actually very smart. He realized from a very, very early point in negotiations that the EU was not serious at all about neither accession nor visa-free travel. So he's now got everything to play for. He didn't get what he wanted from the Europeans. He didn't get what he wanted from America, which was a much more robust, much more hands-on policy from Obama. He wanted a buffer zone within Syria so he could hit back at Kurdish positions and take a much stronger position there. So what we've got now is we've got a wildcat. He has been very cleverly repositioning himself in the last few months with various regional leaders from Saudi Arabia to Iran. And everybody seems to be looking at him as this super diplomat in the region, somebody who can cultivate relations with just about anybody and everybody. And that's going to help him in the future carve out a better deal for Turkey.
You know, Daniel, one of the things I think it was a few weeks ago when they showed American advisors in Syria wearing Kurdish insignia, which, of course, the government in Turkey went ballistic over, because this is their greatest nightmare, is a Kurdish state on their border, which the United States has been working with the Kurds. And, you know, and we can talk about the Kurdish issue on a separate program here, but, you know, from Erdogan's position, the United States is not doing anything to secure Turkey's security as a NATO member. And I think this played into his diplomatic thinking. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I mean, he has tried to equate the YPG in the Syrian conflict to the PKK the whole time. Wants to hit them, also has had, you know, over 30 years of bad blood with Syria and the Assad government as well, and has utilized this to train, fund, and equip al-Nusra and ISIL in cooperation with the U.S. and NATO.
Yep.
And so, once this optically didn't look so good for him back home, even though now there are millions of Kurds living in Turkey that he should be working to incorporate into society, and instead is ostracizing them, yes, he utilized this. And Martin made an interesting point. This, for the last several years, as I had said, last decade, has been building to this point for him where globally he is now in the position wanting to be the Saddam of 20 years ago as the ruler of the Middle East. And now he has the U.S., NATO, and the EU basically to, as long as he cooperates on Syria, basically they're going to let him do what he wants. And now he has the energy relationship that is a critical corridor for Russia, and the Middle East, the hand he can have in Israel, and tensions between that and Jordan is so monumental and significant, on top of the fresh water flow from southeast Anatolia into Syria, that he has all the cards on the table, and he has a few months left, 4 to 5 months, to where he could really test it before we swear in a new president here in the United States. So this is a very dangerous situation that gives too much autonomy to Erdogan in the region.
Okay, Yunus, in Istanbul, would you reflect upon that? I mean, how could, because we've just heard here from our other two guests that there's so many different variants now that Turkey could pursue if it wants to. It will be courted by a number of partners out there. I mean, but specifically, I think what's most important here, what is going to be Turkey's policy vis-a-vis Syria, or will it change at all? Go ahead.
Starting with that, it will change. I personally, as a representative of the Patriotic Party, had meetings with the government, with government representatives before the coup, and I received a clear sign of the will to re-establish diplomatic ties with Damascus and as well as with Cairo as well. So I think this will be taken up again when things are a little bit established. And I think the reconciliation with Russia will help here as well. Now, let's get this right. Gentlemen, there is a revolution going on here. And this revolution is at least regional, if not global. Turkey is slowly leaving the Atlantic system. Yep. That's what's happening. This is a matter of Turkey's security interests. This is a matter of Turkey's economical interests. Our biggest trade partners are China, Russia, and Germany. This is a matter of culture. The United States is here not really present. So Turkey is slowly moving away from the Atlantic system, and that's what the basic reason why this coup happened. And that's also the basic reason why they in the NATO are so much in panic. This is much broader, much bigger than Erdogan. This is This is a tectonic movement.
I agree.
This will affect Turkish-Syrian relations, Turkish-Chinese, Turkish-Russia, Iran, and so on. This will change the world.
Martin, if I can go to you in Beirut here. Let me go to Beirut here.
I think Eunice.
Go ahead, Martin.
Eunice is on the money. Yeah, he's absolutely right. And I think the West needs to wake up to the realities of what we're looking at ahead now. I mean, it's quite extraordinary that what's happened in the last few weeks with improving relations with Israel and then very smartly improving and restoring relations with Moscow. I mean, the Russians there where you are, Peter, must be salivating. They must be licking their lips and looking at Turkey and thinking, this is what we've been waiting for all these years. For the first time in God knows how many years, we can actually bring in a Sunni Middle Eastern country, not Arab, of course, into our fold and really show NATO how weak it is and how that Turkey now working closely
Martin,
with.
I'd like to jump in here. I mean, let's reflect. Let me reflect upon this, gentlemen. Hang on. Eunice, please hang on. You know, Martin, I think it's very interesting is that a few weeks ago there was the NATO summit in Warsaw, and Russia's the great aggressor, the whole reason for NATO to exist and all that. And then you have this with Erdogan. I mean, you know, NATO really must. It looks very silly right now. Okay. It looks very, very. I mean, even Greece, not the best friend of Turkey, you know, needless to say, they call Russia a strategic partner. I'm agreeing with Eunice here. Is that I mean, I think the whole North Atlantic, Atlanticist view for the world, for Turkey and the region, it is dissipating. It's falling through their hands like sand, and it's becoming very obvious. Go ahead, Martin, if you want to reflect on that.
And it's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse when the next step, and I would guess the next step is to move the relations from just rhetoric with Damascus to actually a proper relationship of sorts. I mean, Erdogan desperately needs to nail the Kurdish situation, and no one's helping him with that. And it's just absolutely reasonable to turn to the Russians, and it'll be Moscow who brokers the deal. I don't believe Erdogan's. Whatever he called President Assad the other day. I think yesterday he used some derisive tone. I think that's all for the cameras. I think the next thing we'll be looking at is a deal with Assad. And then where does that place NATO? Where does that place the Americans? Where does that place the whole security of the entire region when we've gone from a situation of really turning around 180 degrees. And in fact, it's not NATO anymore. It's the Russians and Turkey who have created a more stable Middle East by inevitably doing what really the West should have done a couple of years ago, which should have been start talking to Mr. Assad.
Okay, Daniel, would you agree with that? Because it seems to me that's much more logical because all of the players that Martin just mentioned here have a vested interest in resolving that conflict. Washington never has. Go ahead, Daniel.
There's a few critical points, though. As Erdogan looks to pull away from the U.S., he still needs the U.S. investment, a good trade balance, and he critically needs Germany on board with so many millions of Turks living over there. So this is going to be a complicated chess match for him. In relation to Russia, it's extremely wise, with all the investment Russia already has in Turkey, for him to cause that situation to calm down and have normalized relations on top of back and forth energy investments, the Bosphorus being a critical corridor for gas, etc. The Syria situation, I agree, he could be the master broker in a perfect world. However, the complication of the last 30 years of conflict between Syria funding the PKK and Turkey hitting back at Syria with freshwater counterinsurgency, etc., I would hope that this is going to be the great broker deal, but I'm not sure that all of that bad blood is going to be able to resolve itself.
Okay, gentlemen, we've run out of time on that very fascinating note. We'll see what happens to the Kurds. Many thanks to my guests in Istanbul, Beirut, and Washington. And thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time. And remember, Crosstalk rules.